Say, economic survey is actually a report card of the performance of the economy of past financial year. What is the difference between a survey and a budget? Economic survey is published just a day before the budget. Budget is annual financial statements. See, economic survey, the difference is economic survey is being drafted by the economic division of the Ministry of Finance under the supervision of Economic Advisor of India. Whereas the annual financial statement is under the Ministry of Finance. See, annual financial statement is a legal statutory document. It is having the parliamentary legitimacy. It is a legally binding one. Whereas the economic survey is a revisal document and an advisory document, not binding on the government of India. In the management point of view, the economic survey differs from the annual financial statement is in the form of estimate. There are three types of the estimate in the national income accountings. Three types of the estimates. One is advanced estimate. Second one is budgetary estimate. And the third one is revised estimate. Advanced estimate is a forecast is being drafted by NSO, National Statistical Organization. Whereas the revised estimate, budgetary estimate is an allocative statement, an allocation statement at the time of budget is being drafted by Ministry of Finance, exclusively by the Ministry of Finance. Whereas the advanced estimate is a forecast being drafted by NSO along with the other government agencies, including the Ministry of Finance. Whereas the revised estimate, economic survey is based on the revised estimates. Revised estimates is being done at the end of the financial year, in which revised estimate in which none of the government organization are binding one. Revised estimates deals with the actuals. The actual expenditure occurred as it has been estimated during the time of budget. The actual, in case of shortfall of a particular expenditure, it has to be fulfilled by the supplementary grant, so that the revised estimate is closely associated with the parliament, because it is the Lok Sabha to authorize the supplementary grant in the form of the money bill. It is the Lok Sabha through the appropriation bill has to authorize the supplementary grant. So revised estimate is collected to the parliament actually in case of shortfall. So that seems to be the difference between annual financial statement and the survey. Okay. What this survey of the financial year 25-26 states. The economic survey of the 25-26 financial year is somewhat distinctive one of using many of the metaphor உருவகங்கள், many of the metaphor. In every chapter there is a metaphor. In every chapter that the survey goes, a metaphor. Survey starts with the metaphor of idealizing the Indian national economy as the economic statecraft, as the economic statecraft, as the economic statecraft, economic statecraft of the India, that means the Indian national economy of India, is going through the landscapes, the various landscapes in the world of the interdependent economies. Right from since 1950, after the end of Second World War, there emerged the interdependent economies, where the national economies are dependent each other on market. Not only the market, it was the global investors. So economies are the two types in classification emerged based on the functions. Those national economies of investment driven and those national economies of consumption driven. Economies cannot be classified exclusively of investment driven or the national or the consumption driven exclusively, because the economy of India, right from 1991, when the liberalization occurred, in which the foreign investments were liberalized in the external market, up to 2007 financial year, performed as an investment-driven economy, based on the investments as the plumbing propeller, as like the craft which having the propeller. Investments served as a propulsion for the economic functions. But the global recession occurred. The global recession occurred in the financial year of 2007-8, which forced the planners with some measures of austerity and the measures of reformations, readjustments, in which the national economy of India emphasized mostly on the consumption-driven factor. That is the two types of the economic functions. Whereas the economic survey of 25-26, as I told, represents is being idealized as an economic statecraft in the year 25-26 financial year. The previous financial year is marked as a year of resurgence, and transformations. The year of resurgence and the transformations, the year of resilience. It is a transformation, is an economic statecraft moving from the ideal of resilience, where the economy proved the resilience in the midst of the global sticks, as it is called. The survey calls it as the global sticks, the global restrictions. In the midst of the global restrictions, where the economy proved a resilience, the year 25-26 financial year is considered as a shift in the Indian economy, a shift from being an economy of resilience in the geopolitical competitions and the technological rivalries, where the global landscape known for the geopolitical competitions in the form of tariff wars, technological rivalries, and vulnerabilities that expose the global value chains, from being the resilience to become the economy of strategic indispensability. What is that strategic indispensability? Survey idealize. Strategic indispensability is an objective of establishing the Indian economy to have a significant presence in the global value chains. Establishing the Indian economy to have a critical presence in the global value change. The critical presence in the global value change. So the financial year 25-26 represents an era of transformation from being the economy of resilience into the economy of strategic indispensability. Strategic indispensability, how certain objectives. What are the objectives of the strategic indispensability of Indian economy? The objectives, that means the objectives could be categorized as the long-term vision and the short-term missions. The long-term vision as a long-term objective to establish the strategic autonomy for India. One is to establish the strategic autonomy for India. Then the short-term visions, the medium-term visions. The medium-term visions, one is to go through to navigate the global sticks. That means the use of authority, certain authority in the global economy of using the penal rates, the punitive measures, global sticks, ulagagiya tadigal. That is the penal rate often used against the Indian economy as the Trump measures as the punitive, where they enables the economy to navigate the global sticks and able to overcome the trade fragmentations. The trade fragmentations in the global trade, the fragmentations due to competitive tariffs, due to certain measures. For example, the European Union measure as Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. CBAM is enforced by European Union, which come into force from the financial year of 26-27. CBAM is a non-tariff restriction on imports to European Union. Non-tariff restrictions on imports to European Union. CBAM was in the form of a tax of compensation, on emissions. The emissions in the production of, in the manufacture of certain goods. The emission occurred in the manufacture of certain goods that imported to the European Union. Called as Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanisms. Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism is a form of tariffs. Tariffs levied on the goods that imported to the European Union involved in emission of carbon in the location of the production. European Union justify it as a compensatory carbon tax. European Union justify that it is the measure of compliance to emission reduction. Compliance to emission reduction. Impact of the CBAM on India. The impact of the CBAM on India is in the form of a non-tariff barrier. In the form of the non-tariff barrier, which affects at least 12 sector of exports. 12 sector of exports. For example, iron and steel, aluminium, hydrogen, iron and steel exports to European Union, aluminium exports to European Union, hydrogen exports to European Union, which comes under as an example of 12 sectors that affects the export sector. So we need an economy which can go through these trade fragmentation measures. That is the short-term objectives. Then what are the strategies? What are the strategies of Indian economy to achieve the strategic indispensability? The strategic indispensability of the economy could be achieved by one is friendshoring, leveraging friendshoring, leveraging the friendshoring. Friendshoring is of establishing the supply chain locations with the friendly countries. Establishing the supply chain locations in the friendly countries, supply chain locations in the strategically aligned or the friendly nations. Then 2, in the form of diversification of export destination. Diversification of export destination, that is friendshoring. Then second, supply chain realignment. Supply chain realignment in the form of active pursuit of bilateral trade negotiations and pacts. Active measures to have a bilateral trade negotiations and the pacts as Indo-European Free Trade Agreement, Indo-US Free Trade Agreement, Indo-Malaysia Free Trade Agreement. That is the bilateral negotiation strategy. One is leveraging friendshoring. Then supply chain realignment. Then third, domestic foundations for global competitions. Domestic foundations for the global competitions. Domestic foundations for the global competitions in the form of one is capex, enhancing capital expenditure. Enhancing the capital expenditure. Then two, manufacturing reorientations through the PLI schemes. Then three, rationalization of GST. Rationalization of the GST. Then fourth, simplification of labor codes. Simplification of the labor codes. Then establishing a strong digital public infrastructures. So this seems to be the conscience of the Indian economic planning. The conscience of Indian economic planning is to enable the economic spacecraft to get transformed from being a national economy of resilience in the midst of global turmoil into an economy of strategic indispensability with the medium-term objectives and the long-term objectives of the vision. Then strategy. One is establishing friendshoring, realignment of global value chains, then a strong domestic foundations for the global competitiveness of the economy. So that seems to be the conscience. That seems to be the conscience of the objectives. Then the present outlook. The present outlook. As we are exploring at the interdependent economy, India is a part of the global economy. The present global outlook, which establishes the trends occurred from the financial year 2025 to 26, in which advanced economies, where the global growth rate seems to be around 3.1 to 3%. 3.1 to 3% was in the threshold of the 3%, mean, in which advanced economy is far below the global average growth rate. Whereas emerging market developing economy, in which India was a part of it. Advanced economies are those developed economies of a larger, with a high per capita income, whereas emerging market developing economies demonstrate a growth which seems to be higher than the global average, When a growth, it seems to be the nominal growth, the nominal GDP. When the nominal GDP is converted into real GDP, when we applied price levels or the inflation, that means nominal GDP divided by inflation leads to real GDP. So it is the trend of inflation, the inflation forecast of the advanced economy. The global inflation was the 3.8% when compared to the advanced economy. Advanced economy seems to be much low in the advanced economy, whereas the emerging market developing economies seems to be higher in the inflation. So in comparative standards, higher in the inflation. So it is the external environment. By comparing the growth rate of the national economies across the world and the inflationary forecast of the national economies across the world, it established a condition, survey states, is the condition of fragile, with a great uncertain and weakened. It is the fragile stability. Why it is fragile? It is fragile because of an uncertainty exists as AI risk, artificial intelligence boom going on in the world. The artificial intelligence boom going on in the world is also associated with the critical concern that this artificial intelligence has to demonstrate the efficiency in the productivity, to meet the productivity expectations. If failed, it leads to the asset revaluations and the financial contagions. Another crisis. AI boom is associated with the crisis, a concern of crisis. Is a concern of the crisis. Then the second, it is fragile. Because It is fragile because of the trade conflict going on. A trade conflict in the form of trade disputes, penal tariffs, where the US penal tariffs were using the trade tariffs as a political instrument, using the trade tariffs as the political instrument. So it seems to be the two concerns. One is the artificial intelligence risk and uncertainty. Then the second one is trade conflicts. The trade conflicts makes the conditions to be fragile. Conditions to be fragile. As the global invasion is being reducing, as the global inflation is being reduced, most of the central banks are going to accommodative stand. Central banks represents the stance in dealing with the liquidity and the interest rates. In India, it was MPC, Monetary Policy Committee. Monetary Policy Committee deals with the regulations of the interest rates. The regulations of the interest rates represents four category of the stance. One is regulation of the interest rates. Monetary Policy Committee has got an objective. The one is objective of maintaining the balance between inflation and the growth. In which Monetary Policy Committee has given with the mandate of maintaining the inflationary level as 4% with a tolerance of +2 or -2 to the 4%. 4% of the inflationary rate has been pronounced by the Tarapur Committee recommendations. That is the Monetary Policy Committee that assemble for 4 times in a financial year, as known for the stance. One is accommodative stand. Second one is withdrawal. Accommodative stand. Second one is the withdrawal. Then third one is neutral. Fourth one is calibrated tightening. That is the 4 normative stands of the central banks and the Monetary Policy Committee. Accommodative stand, in which MPC involved in cutting the rate. That means it is a pro-growth. Reducing the interest rate in order to inject a liquidity for the credit availability. That is pro-growth. Then second one is withdrawal. Withdrawal means gradual. The gradual withdrawal from easing. Gradually raising the interest rate. Withdrawal from the easing. The neutral. The neutral, in which the central banks consider a neutral of maintaining the status quo. As the positioning, a point of balance between the growth and the price levels. Then calibrated tightening. That means the aim for the interest rate aimed for the liquidity control. In the form of raising the interest rates. So it is the fragile stability because the advanced economies, the central banks of the advanced economies becoming more and more accommodative. more and more accommodative, accommodative one, more and more accommodative one, more and more accommodative, in which in the global landscape of fragile stability, the fragile stability economic survey forecast the financial year 2027 as a transitional period for the Indian economy. It is a transitional period for Indian economy to internalize the structural reforms taken from the previous financial year, to internalize the structural reforms, where the financial year 2027 to be considered as the year in which the GST, to internalize the GST through rationalization and simplification, compliance simplifications, then to internalize the tax triads in India, the triads, the three important taxes of the net revenue income of the state of India. One is corporate tax, then second one is personal income tax, and the third one is the GST. To internalize the tax triads, Then second one is to sustain the healthy fundamentals occurred. In the household, firms, and in the banks. And in the bank. And in the bank. Then third one is to invest on the trade negotiations that occurs in future. The trade negotiations that occurs in the future with the US. So by that, the projections in which the real GDP growth rate seems to be 7.2 to 7.4, with the low inflation, in India, which established the economy of India undergoing a rare pace of Goldilocks pace of the economy. What is that Goldilocks pace? Goldilocks, GOLDILOKS. Goldilocks is the rare occasion of the economic history of a nation. Goldilocks is a pace in which the increasing growth rate, the higher growth rate of 7.4%, and with the low inflation as 1.4%, and with the strong fundamentals of resilience to the external vulnerability. The strong fundamentals of resilience to external vulnerability, in which the forex reserves of India presently of around $700 billion, that can serve 9 months of the import payments. 9 months of the import payments. It is the Goldilocks. It is the Goldilocks period in India. What are the drivers that makes the Indian economy to undergo this golden era? The golden era of the temporal pace, called as the Goldilocks. Golden era of the temporal pace of the Goldilocks was due to one. One is the household consumption, domestic consumption, rise in the domestic consumptions. Rise in the Goldilocks is expressed in the form of one, the rise in the domestic consumption. rise in the domestic consumption was due to rise in the domestic consumptions due to GST rationalization, due to streamlining the GST by simplifications of the slabs in the tax structures. This GST rationalization. Second is due to resurgence in the manufacture. Due to the resurgence in the manufacture. Resurgence in the manufacture. Resurgence in the manufacture due to the PLI schemes, the role of PLI schemes. Then third one is expansion of credit availability. Expansion of the credit availability due to digital finance infrastructures. Digital finance infrastructure. Expansion of the credit availability due to the digital finance infrastructure. Digital finance infrastructure. That is the drivers of the Goldilocks. But it is also known for the cautions. The cautions also known for the cautions. The cautions of the Goldilocks. The cautions. One is the stickiness of the food inflation. The stickiness of the food inflation in India. The stickiness of the food inflation in India. That is the caution for the Goldilocks. The stickiness of the food inflation in India. Then the second one is the second one is the exchange rate vulnerability. The exchange rate vulnerability on India. The exchange rate vulnerability where the rupee is undergoing a fall in terms of dollars. Rupee is undergoing the fall in the terms of the dollars. But it seems to be the rare occasion that India undergoing the Goldilocks pace in India. Goldilocks pace in India. Then the Indian economy. The growth drivers of Indian economy. The growth drivers of the Indian economy, as the national economy survey in the traditional means analyzes, examines the growth drivers of the national economy in the demand side and in the supply side. Are the national income in the Keynesian equations highlights as the y is equal to national income. Income is equal to expenditure. Income is equal to expenditure. And the expenditure could be splitted out into the household expenditure, splitted out into the investment expenditure, consumption expenditure, government expenditure, and the income from the foreign, as y is equal to I plus C plus G plus X minus M. So the X minus M, that means income is equal to the expenditure. It is the expenditure part that creates the demand. So drivers of the economic growth of India could be examined in the demand side and in the supply side. In the demand side, the demand created for the economy in the domestic and in external. In domestic, the demand created in the economy in the demand side was due to one, increase in the private final consumption expenditure. The private final consumption expenditure has increased for the first time, surpassing the pre-COVID level of 7.5%. Due to low inflation, stable employment, and tax rationalization. Low inflation, stable employment and tax rationalization, in which the private final consumption expenditure was highly contributed with the rise of consumption level in the rural areas. The consumption level in the rural areas was due to increase in the agricultural income and the GST rationalization. Then second of the domestic source of demand was rise in gross fixed capital formations. The rise in gross fixed capital formation, the rise in the capital expenditure in the form of revival of the private sector investments in India. Revival of the private sector investments in India, in which the gross fixed capital formation establishes a momentum of the growth in future, because gross fixed capitals, those establishes the fixed capitals as the man-made capitals as the large machineries, as the construction sectors, large machineries. So it is that in domestic resources of demand, the two factors, one is rise in the private final consumption expenditure, and the second one is the gross fixed capital formations. Then the external factors of demand, in which the services income played a very important role. Services became an anchor of external stability of the Indian economy, because the services able to offset the compensation occurred in the trade deficits. Services able to compensate the trade. Services income enabled India to offset the vulnerability created by the global tariff uncertainties, the global penal rates and the global tariff uncertainties. So in external sector, the exports represented a resilience of 5.9% despite of the global uncertainties and fragmentations of the global market. The 5.9% of the exports, 5.9% of the export establishes a strong momentum, along with the bilateral prospects of bilateral agreements with the European Union and US, and particularly with the US. So it represents the growth in the demand side, with the resilient exports and the higher on the domestic side, higher private consumption and the higher capital expenditure, which is supplemented. Economic survey uses certain indicators. The indicators called as high frequency indicators. High frequency indicators in the demand side, the indicators of the growth, high frequency indicators as the auto tractor sales, then the air passenger tariffs, both of them deals with the consumptions. Both of them deals with the consumptions. Then capital goods import deals with the capital expenditure. Then the rural income spending, the rural income. So these are the demand side. Demand side, the economic growth rate of 7.4% is fueled by the factors of demand side factors of domestic and external. Then supply side, the supply side factor was mostly associated with the industrial resurgence the industrial resurgence on the service sector as the frontline engine, service sector as the primary growth engine. It was an accelerated growth in services in the financial year 26 as 9.1%, makes the services as the frontline sector. It is the service sector led growth in India because service sector contributes 53.6% of the total GDP. The 53.6% of the total GDP, the service sector, especially the trade, hospitality, and transport services in India, that contributes, that propels the expansion of the service sector as 9.3% in the half of the financial year, enable the service sector led growth. Then the second one is the industrial resurgence in India. The industrial resurgence, especially in the manufacturing sector, a steady manufacturing sector growth, and also supplemented by the construction sector, except the mining sector. Service states mining sector lagged due to the unseasonal rainfalls. It was the manufacturing sector and the construction sector contributes the growth, along with the stability in agriculture, where the agriculture grow only 3.1%, but with the structural shifts in the agricultural growth was pronounced with the diversification, in which the allied sector of agriculture, as the poultry, livestock, made more income than the growth. So in supply side factor, it is the industrial resurgence and service sector propulsion, along with the stability in agriculture, in which the high frequency indicators, the manufacturing sector, gross value output for the manufacturing sector, gross value, GVO, GVA, GDP, GVO, gross value output, GVA, gross value added, GDP, gross domestic product. GVO and GVA deals with production side, GDP at market prices deals with the final consumption side. When GVO, difference between GVO and GVA. GVO deals with the final value of the product. GVA deals with final value of the product minus value of intermediate inputs. Value of the intermediate input. Then GDP is GVA plus taxes minus subsidies. GVA plus taxes minus subsidies. That is the GVA. Okay, GVA. So this seems to be the conditions of the economy. The conditions of economy represents a pace of Goldilocks, and with a high momentum of the growth. In which manufacturing gross value output is stable of 38%, stable at 38%, establishes the fact that it indicates a sustained physical outputs, sustained physical output. Then the production manager index signals is robust, signals a greater momentum of the continuity of the Goldilocks. Then in agriculture, the Rabi sowing area, Rabi deals with the food grains of wheat, that strengthens the farm income and the rural demand in the near future. Then construction industries, a fixed capital, establishes a greater momentum, reflects the ongoing infrastructure momentum. So it establishes a greater prospect. It establishes a greater prospect along with the global landscape uncertainties. The global landscape uncertainty, along with the uncertainties of the global headwinds, along with the uncertainty of the global headwinds, tailwinds. Headwinds means வேற ஏரியாவில் போகலாம். இது ஸ்லைடு ரொம்ப கம்மியாக போயிட்டு இருக்கும். Headwinds will go. Headwinds means those forces of fragile that challenges and restricts the growth, disrupts the growth. Tailwinds means those forces of catalyzers of the growth. Could you give the example of the global tailwind today for India? Any global tailwind today for India? You have to go through an application. In application levels, should not be textual levels. Okay, economy need not to study at all. It is applied. Any example of global tailwind? Any example? Fall in the crude prices is a global tailwind. Prospects of the Ukrainian crisis resolutions is a global tailwind. Then US-Iran talks is a global tailwind. That means tailwind means those factors that enable growth, that enable the growth. Headwinds means தலையில கொட்டுறது headwind, ஓட விடுறது tailwind. Okay, headwind means geopolitical uncertainties. These are all the headwinds. Okay, this seems to be the conditions of the economy. What are all those that we have gone through? What are all those that we have gone through? What are all the goals? Any new things that you learned here? Any new of your concerns that you learned here? Any new? First, we started with difference between survey and the annual financial statement. It is new or old for you? New. Then we categorize the estimates. New or old? New. Then we have gone for it is for new for everyone, making economy as a spacecraft, and the definition of strategic indispensability, strategy of achieving the strategic indispensability. Then the strategic indispensability. Then the policy stance of the central banks. Let me start our unit. The units, the chapters in survey 25-26 survey. The second chapter starts with the fiscal policy, but I made it as I had given the priority to the monetary policy. Because up to 1990, it is the fiscal policy. It was the fiscal policy is important. Fiscal policy was considered as the prime strategy of the government finance and the institutions. But the economic reforms made foreign investments as the most prominent factor in determining the stability and growth in the economy. So monetary policy, regulating the money and finance become more important. Regulating the money and finance became the more important. But both the fiscal policy and the monetary policy are seems to have a common challenge for India. The common challenges of managing the fiscal and the monetary policy are the structural deficits in India. The two structural deficits. One is the fiscal deficit. The fiscal deficit. And the second one is after 1991, after 1980s in India, it was the primary deficit. And the normative, the cyclic future, the deficit occurs in the economic business cycle of boom, recess, recovery, boom. In this deficits occurs. You see, when we have more income, yesterday I got the salary, now I'm spending, and I'm going for more and more money. That is, but when in the recess occurs, there will be more liability for me. That means cyclic deficit. At the recess, I will be having more liability to give others. That is occurs at the cycle. That is cyclic deficit. But undergoing every cycle, there would be a deficit in structure that is called as structural deficit. Structural deficits is like a bottleneck. You see, some fellows consumes beer. A beer, they use pour the beer and keep the beer. Next beer, there will be a bottleneck. The drunkards don't take the bottoms. Bottom. That is bottleneck. It is not bottom. It is remain of bottleneck. At the neck, some remains. That will accumulate. That is called as structural deficits. Structural deficits. It's chronic in India. Chronic disease. Ever exhaustive in India. Fiscal deficit is a structural deficit. Primary deficit is the Indian innovated primary deficit. It is the Indian discovered primary deficit, especially the Congress Party of India. From 1984 to 1989, when Rajiv Gandhi became the Prime Minister, Rajiv Gandhi, on the day he became a Prime Minister, he was a pilot. He know for flying. But he don't leave his Sonia Gandhi to fly. He told that he had a dream. A dream that makes every Indian to fly in the cars. So he started a new economic outlook he started the liberalization, a restrictive liberalization that enabled the foreign investments in India. And the external sector in India has gone highly vulnerable of getting into that trap of external debt. External debt is accumulating in India. to the extent in 1989, where the government of India is going for external debt to pay the external debt. To pay the external kadan vangi, kadan kattanum. External debt. Not of paying the principal, but to pay the interest. To pay the interest. So it became interest payment became very important. Prime Minister was advised, at least you take care of how much interest we are going that. For that, everybody was formed a meeting, not to resolve the burden of interest, just to find out an estimation to calculate the interest called as primary deficit. Primary deficit is equal to fiscal deficit minus interest payments. Minus the interest payments. Say that led to the primary deficit. These two are the structural deficits, along with the another one that comes under the external sector as the current account deficit. These two are the structural deficits. These two are the structural deficit is actually the fiscal problem. Is actually the fiscal problem, but it is associated with the monetary management of India. That is the monetary policy. Monetary policy becomes very important. Monetary, what is the significance of the monetary policy? What is the significance of the monetary policy? What is the significance of the monetary policy? Monetary policy is being significant because it is the monetary policy that determines the real growth. Monetary regulations determines the real growth in the economy. That means monetary regulations deals with the GDP at factor cost. GDP at factor cost becomes GDP at market prices with the addition of taxes and subsidies. The GDP at factor cost that deals with the cost of factors of production is being estimated in terms of money. What is GDP? What is GDP? A total aggregate monetary value of the goods and services produced by a national economy in a particular financial year. That is the GDP. It is the money. So it is the money. It is money. Money is the reason, the monetary policy. Then second one is monetary policy or the monetary management is significant because monetary management is significant because it leads with the liquidity, credit availability and liquidity in the economy. Credit availability and the liquidity in the economy. Then third, monetary policy is significant one in dealing with the exchange rate stability. The exchange rate stability. Increase in the inflation leads to fall in the exchange rate value. Fall in the exchange rate value. That is the monetary policy. Then monetary policy is one that determines the herd, the global herd. What is that global herd? Herd, Mandai, HERD, global herd. Global herd. Global herd, which means the behavior of the global investors. The behavior of the global investors. Global investors, the behavior of the global investors. It is stated a behavior of the, why it is called as herd. Global investors' behavior is based on emulative, and the emulative. If somebody is investing on something, means the others won't seeing that E2 join. That is the herd behavior. The herd behavior was in the form of inflow head and outflow head. Inflow head and the outflow head. What are the determining factors of the global herd? What are the determining factors of the global herd? The determining factor of the global herd is interest rates, central bank interest rates. Central bank interest rates. It is the correlations between federal rate on the federal rate, that is US Federal Bank, on the MPC or Indian Monetary Policy Committee. That is the correlation. Rise in the interest rate, rise in the federal rate, that is the inverse relations. Rise in the federal rate becomes dollars as valuable. Dollar become valuable. So it is exit of the foreign investors out of India. That is exit here. Then the reduction, fall in the federal rate leads to inflow of the global head. Inflow of the global head. That is the correlations. So it is the monetary policy, monetary management is associated with that. The survey states that the monetary policy of India, the monetary policy of the monetary management of India exhibited a robust performance on the structural resilience in the landscapes, in the midst of global uncertainty and the geopolitical fragmentation, uncertainty and the geopolitical fragmentations. The year 2026-27 is considered to be the year of transformation. The year of transformation. The objective is to establish the monetary policy to have a transformational objective from being a reactive regulations, that means responding to the global herd, reactive regulations into anticipatory governance, in which survey identifies the 7 pillars of this transformation in the monetary policy stand of the Indian economy. 7 pillars. One is the monetary tool transmissions. Monetary tool transmissions, in which monetary tool transmissions, in the midst of lower inflation, or the MPC, Monetary Policy Committee, undergoing a transition from accommodative stand to the neutral stand. The accommodative stand was in the form of cut in the interest rates for at least 1 rupee, 100 basis points, on the reduction of the CRR, cash reserve ratio, which enabled at least 2.5 lakhs of liquidity injected. The liquidity injected 2.5 lakhs of liquidity injected that enabled the availability of the credit. Then the most important one, the second one is monetary transformation. Second one is the banking renaissance undergoing in India. the banking renaissance undergoing in India in regard to the asset quality and profitability. The banking renaissance undergoing in India was in the form of unprecedented fall in the toxic assets called as non-performance assets. The gross non-performance assets has been fallen to a larger extent, reflecting a new credit discipline. Then banking sector establishes banking profits, and RBI regulations on the lending rates resulted in transmission of the interest rates to the lending. So that is banking renaissance. Then third, very important one is deep financialization. What is this deep financialization? Deep financialization is the influence of financial market in every corners of household sector, corporate and banking. Influence of financial market in every corners of household sector, corporates and banking. That is deepening the market. Deep financialization, everything getting financials. In household sector, there is a shift. In the financial savings from physical assets into financial assets. The household sectors, more and more household sectors are investing in mutual fund, special investment products, SIP, mutual funds, special investment products. Then more and more household sector investments in equities. That is of the deep financialization of the economy. Deep financialization of the economy reflected in the form of unprecedented increase in the demat accounts in India. The deep financialization. What are the factors of the deep financialization? One prominent factor that led to the deep financialization in India. That means Digital Finance Information System, DFI. Digital Finance Information System is being operated by the RBI and by the nodal departments. Digital Finance Information System is a form of converting your physical assets into info documents. The physical assets into information documents. This is a Digital Finance Information System is a federal platform, is a multi-departmental platform which includes digital information intelligence system operated by telecom department. Then digital information analytical systems operated by the NITI Aayog. Digital Finance Information System led to conversion of the physical assets, the land assets, gold assets, were all into the information assets. What is the significance of the Digital Finance Information System? Digital Finance Information System is known for greater privacy being operated by blockchain technology. blockchain technology. Then second, digital finance information system is known for estimating the financial credibility and the credit availability, online credits. That means multifaceted verifications done by the banking institutions. Then third one is restricts the financial leakage, financial and information leakage. Then very important one is digital finance information system leads to promote financial inclusions, especially it gives financial inclusions, then which associated with DBT, direct benefit transfers. Then digital finance information system is the one way supervisionary system. One-way supervisionary system for the prudent governance. That is the impact of digital finance information system promoted deepening financialization in India. Then next, strategic regulatory innovations in the form of sandboxes, regulatory sandboxes or the regulatory sandboxes. ஒரு யூனிட் கூட முடியல, டைம் ஆகாது, very slow. Regulatory sandboxes are financial verification mechanisms, financial testing procedures for verifying and estimating the quality of innovative financial assets. It was the financial sandboxes becomes the part of India's first international financial city. India's first international financial city in Gujarat, in which sandboxes enable to avert the systemic risk or the systemic failures of the financial markets. Then fifth one is application of AI-led risk mitigation mechanism, in which digital finance infrastructure utilizes AI mechanisms to forecast the herd behavior, and to forecast the financial crisis. Then the social security inclusions, that is one of the most important development in the Indian financial and the money and finance institutions of India. That is the social security inclusions in the form of e-Shramik, national pension scheme, e-Shramik was launched in 2025, which represents an integrated platform which provides the social security coverage for gig workers and unorganized workers to have the mainstream retirement benefits, that is the pension benefits. e-Shramik functions with e-Shramik functions with the contributory pensioning scheme as the contributions of employers, workers, as well as the pension funds, then PM Swanidhi, Pradhan Mantri Pradhan Mantri Street Vendors Accretions Nidhi, Pradhan Mantri Street Vendors Accretion Nidhi, which comes under which represents an affordable microcredit extensive facility, for the street vendors without the collateral guarantees. Then it also provide the linkage with the social security coverage. It deals with the microcredit as 10,000, 30,000, 50,000, and also linked with the social security coverage as the life insurance coverage, accidental insurance coverage, and also having the extensive linkage with Mudra. Then insurance coverage, micro insurance coverage as Sabka Bima Sabki Raksha. Raksha is associated with a micro insurance coverage to function under LIC, the LIC, Life Insurance Corporation of India, in which Raksha Shahis are the women self-employment activities who promotes the insurance coverage for the rural masses, and the program operates with a digital inclusive technology in the form of digitalizing the insurance ecosystem in India. Then monetary policies and the monetary establishment of India, also known for in 2025-26, known for restructuring the institutions as the institutions of insolvency, bankruptcy code institutions, and national company law tribunals, in which with the stipulated time and the speedy resolutions in India. So it establishes a monetary policy and the monetary establishments in India to undergo transformations with the important developments. One is monetary policy transmission from the accommodative to the neutral, then the banking renaissance, then deep financialization, then the strategic regulations, then utility of AI for risk mitigations, then the social inclusions, then institutional restructures. Then chapter 2 deals with the fiscal development in India. The fiscal development represents a great management enlightenment in the Indian economy. The fiscal development and the fiscal policy of India is not of dealing with the statistics, but of being an anchor point of the economic stability, economic survey, which states that the fiscal policy of India is not of dealing with the fiscal rates of the statistics, but to establish itself as an anchor point of economic stability. When a ship caught in a storm, which saves the ship? Which one saves the ship? That is anchor. As an anchor point of the economic stability, and the fiscal responsibility of dealing any debt as the generational liability for the future, a moral stand that the present debt should not be the burden on future generations, should not be burden on the future generations. So Indian fiscal policy, the year 25-26 demonstrated that the Indian fiscal policy is not exclusive of austerity measures, that means expenditure control measures, but of a calibrated measures of emphasis on golden mean fiscal policy, the golden mean of the fiscal consolidation of India. It is the golden mean of the fiscal consolidation, a golden mean of the fiscal consolidation to have a balance between the expenditure, that is the capex expenditure, balance between the capex expenditure and the capex, balance between a balance between the capital expenditure, that is capital investments, and the capital investments, and the balance between the capital expenditure and reorientation of the revenues. There are the 7 pillars of the fiscal strategy. One is the fiscal consolidation. Fiscal consolidation in the form of anchoring stability in the world of vulnerability. Then reorientation of the revenues to increase the revenue buoyancy in India. Then expenditure quality, that means restructuring the expenditure. Then the GST rationalization. Then the debt sustainability. One is the fiscal consolidation. The fiscal consolidation in the form of a calibrated fiscal strategy. A calibrated fiscal strategy of establishing the fiscal deficit as the 4.3% of the GDP, 4.3% from 4.4 to the 4.3. That is a gradual sloping decline of the fiscal deficit, called as fiscal glide, a gradual slope deficit reduction of the fiscal deficit, along with sustaining the public investments. Then second, it was the revenue buoyancy. In the form of, that means increasing the tax revenue. In the form of digitalization of the tax administration. And promotion of technology-enabled compliance. Resulted in expansion of the tax base. It resulted in the expansion of the tax base, in which the revenue receipts in India is being increased to 8.5% of the GDP, 9.1% of the GDP, with the rise in the direct taxes due to digitalization of the tax administration. Then reorientation of expenditure. Reorientation of the expenditure. Expenditure to emphasize towards capital expenditure. Capital expenditure. The capital expenditure influences the multiple effect. The two aspects of the capital expenditure, impact of the capital expenditure. One is the multiplier effect. That is 1%, 2.5% increase. The increase in the capital expenditure automatically leads to 4.5% of the growth. 4.5% of the growth. That is the multiplier effect of the capital expenditure. Then the rise in the capital expenditure also result in crowding in effect. Crowding in effect. Crowding in effect. That means 1% increase in the capital expenditure, public capital expenditure, leads to 2.5% of private capital expenditure. Crowding in effect. Crowding in effect. Crowding in effect. Then the reorientation of the capital expenditure in the form of reducing fiscal rigidities. That means expenditure rigidities. What is expenditure rigidities? Expenditure rigidities is being undergone in the state governments today. Expenditure rigidities, that means the expenditure rigidities in the form of cash transfers, urimai togaigal, cash transfers. Then expenditure rigidities in the form of freebies. Expenditure rigidities in the form of going back to the old pension schemes. Expenditure rigidities in the form of interest payments, public administration, salaries. That is, the fiscal policy is oriented to a calibrated attitude of fiscal glide of gradual reduction of the fiscal deficit, then reorientation of expenditure, then the GST rate rationalization. That means the methods, that is the components of the rationalization. One is simplification of the rate slabs. Simplification of the rate slabs as the luxuries with the 18%, then necessities with the 5%, sin goods with the 40%. Luxuries as 18, necessities as the 20, sin goods with the 40%. Then the digitalization in the form of e-way bill for the better compliance, the GST rationalization. Then the debt sustainability in India. The debt sustainability resulted in reducing sovereign ratio. What is sovereign ratio? Sovereign ratio is of the debt liability of the government bonds. Sovereign ratio, that means the government debt to the GDP. The sovereign ratio of India is 53% of the GDP, is much lesser than Japan of 200%. 200% of the Japan. 200% of Japan. 130% of the United States. In India, the sovereign debt to the GDP ratio is being as the 53%. 53%, and moving towards the target of 51% to be achieved in the next 2 years. 51% to achieve. Then the component of the debt. One is the debt of mostly in the form of national currencies. Sovereign ratio is very important. National currencies. Then component of the debt, mostly the 80% of the external debt of India is of the long-term debt. The long-term debt of more than 1 year. What is the significance of the sovereign ratio? One is sovereign ratio is a determining future of credit ratings, international credit ratings being done by Standard and Poor, Dow Jones, Standard and Poor. It is the international credit agency. Standard and Poor credit ratings in India established the category of triple B. That is, the credit ratings is one of the influence of global head behavior of the global investor. Then sovereign ratio is much important of ensuring external vulnerability, ensuring the stability towards the external vulnerability of economy, ensuring the stability towards the external vulnerability of the economy. Sovereign ratio is also important, is closely associated with the structural deficits. Higher sovereign ratio means influence expansion or widening the deficit. Lower sovereign ratio reducing the deficit. Then the cooperative fiscal federalism. The necessity of the cooperative fiscal federalism. Is associated with the state fiscal policies. The state fiscal policies are associated with the expenditure rigidities of the state fiscal policies would have shadow effect of the fiscal consolidation in India. Shadow effect, that means the effect of vulnerability in one component would have its effect on the whole sum. That is the shadow effect. That is requirement of the survey advises requirement of cooperative fiscal federalism. And the fourth very important one, very important one in the study of fiscal policy management is digital public financial management. Digital public financial management, it is the application of digital technology in public finance. Digital public management represents a centralized supervisionary system. Then a centralized allocation system of credit. What are the significant aspects of the digital finance? One is just-in finance to the state governments, just-in finance to the local governments, to the local governments, to the subordinate state institution. Then ULIN, ULI, as like UPI. That means unified loan interface. Unified loan interface. Unified loan interface. That is a centralized digital system of ensuring the enablability of the credit, supervision of the lending, supervision of the credit, availability of the credit, timely availability of the credit, and also a centralized system of financial positions, and estimating the financial worthiness of the client, Digital public finance management. It is a public financial system. Is being operated by controller of finance. The controller of finance as a subordinate of CAG. Emerging as the chief of emerging as a central system of credit and financial credit availability and financial credibility estimations in India. That seems to be the aspects of fiscal policy management. Deals with the 7 pillars, 7 parts of the fiscal policy management. I categorized every segment of every chapter into 7 focused areas, but time is running out. The fiscal consolidation, revenue buoyancy, எக்ஸ்பெண்டிச்சர் குவாலிட்டி, எல்லாத்துலேயும் ஒன்று ரெண்டு முக்கியமான விஷயங்கள் தெரிஞ்சாவே போதும். அப்புறம் ஃப்ரேம்வொர்க் இப்போ ஃபிஸ்கல் பாலிசி மேனேஜ்மெண்ட் ஃப்ரேம்வொர்க் என்ன ஒரு புது அப்ரோச். ஃபிஸ்கல் மேனேஜ்மெண்ட் இஸ் அன் ஆங்கர், வருங்காலத்துக்கு ஏற்ற மாதிரி. ஸோ படிப்படியா ஃபிஸ்கல் கைடு. இட் இஸ் நாட் ஆஃப் restricting the expenditure, but a golden mean of balance between capital expenditure and reoriented capital expenditure and revenue buoyancy, and that is the framework. Then the inflation. As the economy enters the Goldilocks is simply not a fluke, not of accident, but it is the outcome of a collaborated synchronization between RBI's monetary policy and the government supply side interventions. The inflation conditions in India to be focusedly learned on the 7 important areas. One is the growth and inflation paradox today is unprecedented and distinctive in India, Indian exceptionalism. Then what are the drivers of this fall in the price levels? Then a core inflation analysis with a new approach. Then it is the inflation growth paradox. India, where the Indian economy represents its distinctiveness, deviating from the normative inverse relations demonstrated by Philip Cow, the traditional Philip Cow logic. Which establishes a inverse relations between inflation and the growth. Philip Cow deals with the optimum inflation as a prerequisite for the growth. When the inflation, it states, for a growth we need inflation. A Philip Cow, which means when the inflation falls, the growth falls. Employment, Philip Cow represents the relations between inflation and employment. Inflation and the employment. Higher inflation, rise in the prices makes the producers to have more investment on production, so it creates more job. It creates more job. Fall in the prices leads discouragement for the producers. It leads to less job. But in India today, which represents India defies this traditional Philip Cow logic, where the growth along with fall in inflation, called as Goldilocks, as a rare phenomena because of a strong macroeconomic fundamentals in India of restricting a year-long attempts of restricting the inflations. The macroeconomic fundamentals fall in the inflation was because of the factors. One is agriculture. Agriculture in India represents a Goldilocks factor, with the increase in the production along with the increase in the income. Increase in the production along with the increase in the income was due to diversification of the agriculture, structural diversification of the agriculture. For the first time, agriculture, the allied income from the allied sector more than the agro sector, crop sector. For the first time, horticultural crops generated more income than the food grains in India. Horticultural crops generated more income. What are the factors for this agricultural Goldilocks? One is favorable monsoon that led to rise in the crop production. Favorable monsoon led to increase in the gross sown area. Then enhanced supply chain logistics in agriculture. Enhanced supply chain logistics in which the e-Chopal's digital platforms played a very important role. That is the fall, that is the disinflation. Then estimating the inflation for the first time, the headline inflation is being measured with the price levels of consumer price index. Then the core inflation, when the consumer price index is deducted from the food and the fuel prices, that is the core inflation. Then the refined core is one. The core inflation is being again deducted from gold. Then again it deducted from the gold and transport prices. And the transport prices. Then rejecting the core. See, the inflation in India, the disinflation conditions in India, fall in the inflation on the price levels in India was due to two factors. One is the Goldilocks sectors of agriculture and manufacture resurgence. Then the second one is the base effect. That means the base effect, that is the base level prices, change in the base level prices of the previous financial years. So it is a Goldilocks, as the fall in the prices due to the monetary policy management instruments, and along with the supply side interventions of the state. One is in the form of buffer stock managements in India, where the government of India able to release the food stocks at the time of need, buffer stock management. Then absorption of the surplus food stocks through price stabilization fund. Then removal of export restrictions, that is export restrictions, especially on agro products, fishery products, dairy products. Then import duty reductions for the edible oils, Then the very important factor was the fall in the inflation in both the wholesale price index and the retail and the consumer price index levels. The difference between the wholesale price indexes and the consumer price indexes. Wholesale price index is being estimated in all India, in pan India future. Consumer price index being estimated with consumptional category future. Consumer price index of rural, consumer price index of urban, consumer prices of the rural agro laborers, consumer price index of the rural non-agro laborers, that is consumption categories. Wholesale price index is known for a 7 days lag. That means wholesale price index known for the 7 days lag. That means WPI prices announced today was the price exists 7 days before. Consumer price index is 1 month lag. Wholesale price index is not accounted with services. Consumer price index are accounted with the services. The crucial difference between the wholesale price indexes and the consumer price index is food weightage. Consumer price index is known for food. 40% deals with the food and beverages. Here, the convergence of wholesale and the retail, was due to the factors. One factor, that means convergence of wholesale and retail was due to the factors of softening of the food prices. Then second one is improvement in the transport logistics in India. Then the inflation management in India also deals with a new forms of the inflation, that is the imported inflation as a prominent factor. Imported inflation, which means rise in the import prices. The impact of prices due to rise in the imports. That means that was the imported inflation prices seen in manufacturing sector and the energy sector. So that seems to be the aspects. The future outlook of the inflationary levels in India depended on geopolitical factors outside. Then the base effect in which in the next week the government of India is going to change the base year of the inflation. It depends upon the base effect and it depends upon the geopolitical conflicts in India. Here we have to know that the headline inflation in India was 1.7% in India, and 1.7% of the headline inflation, along with the growth of 7.4%, which establishes a rare pace of Goldilocks. Then agriculture. they will become angry. They become, so tomorrow we'll continue. We'll make further, we'll concise. I'll be sending the slides. Do you need the slides? I'll be sending the slides tomorrow. Okay. So the thing is framework. Framework is important. Then framework means it deals with the main. Then new aspects. What are the new aspects that we studied? Digital digital information platforms. Then what are the frameworks? What are the new aspects that we have gone through? Goldilocks. Then deviation from the Philip curve. Okay. Okay. What is Philip curve? Statement. Financial year is known for higher inflation. Financial year is known for higher growth rate. The financial year is known for higher forex resource. Which statements are right? The statements are they right? You will select which is the right statement. The incorrect statement as the right. If we fail to discuss, means it tempted to select the incorrect statement. If you made a discussion, why the global herd going on, what factors determines the global herd, means you will eliminate the statements. Okay. Still 2 days. I will equip you. Okay. Don't worry. See you. நான் இதை போட்டு நாளைக்கு காலையில் அனுப்பிச்சிடறேன். கொஞ்சம் ஸ்ட்ரீம்லைன் பண்ணி நான் இது ஃபேக்ட்ஸ் எல்லாம் அவாய்ட் பண்ணிட்டேன். நம்பர்ஸ் போட்டுட்டேன். இத்தனை பர்சன்ட், அத்தனை பர்சன்ட், இவ்வளோ பில்லியன் டாலர்ஸ், அதெல்லாம் நம்மளுக்கு வேணாம். ஓகே. எவ்வளோ அவாய்ட் பண்ணுமோ அவ்வளோ அவாய்ட் பண்ணால் கான்செப்ட்ஸ் மட்டும் ஒவ்வொரு ஸ்லைடாக நிறுத்தி அந்த ஸ்லைடில் என்ன இருக்குன்னு பார்த்து எழுதிட்டுங்க. அதெல்லாம் எழுதிட்டு போயிடுங்க. நாளைக்கு நான் சீக்கிரம் முன்கூட்டி அனுப்பிச்சிடுறேன். ஒரு பிரிண்ட் எடுத்துங்க.
லட்சுமி அக்ஷயோட பேப்பரே காணும். மைக்கா அக்ஷயோட பேப்பரை காணும். இவங்க வச்சிருக்காங்கக்கா. இன்னைக்கு